part of that pre-half and post-game, and he's also a former BYU men's basketball assistant coach, and above all, he's just an incredibly, incredibly good man. It's Coach Tim LaComb joining us here on the Full Court Press. Coach, thanks for your time. Great to have you.
Great, thank you so much. I don't think I've ever had anybody say that about me from Logan. So
yeah, you got to have DJ and PK be better. I mean, look, if they're going to have you on their show, they got to.
Well, he did qualify from Logan.
Oh, that's a good point.
Typically, when the way that it would work is we'd arrive in Logan night before the game for shoot around, and we'd be greeted by a couple hundred people telling us, that we're entering the bowels of hell, and didn't have very nice things to say about my mom or my family. It's nice to hear some good folks up there.
Oh, man, Tim, you're one of the best in the business. I had the honor and pleasure of working with you for a game in the Beehive Classic, and you were just an absolute blast and a consummate professional. No one better than you, and so it's great to have you on our show. Honor and privilege.
It's nice of you to say, man. Thank you.
Hey, Coach, Nuggets Jazz series now split at 1 apiece. What differences did you see between Game 1 and Game 2?
You know what? Really, it's a funny game, and basketball and momentum's really fickle. But really, the story of Game 1 was Donovan Mitchell, and Jamal Murray basically going back and forth at each other. I have always absolutely loved Jamal Murray, even back to the college days, watching him play. Just one of those guys that can get you a basket from anywhere at any point in time, and seems like the bigger the situation, the better he gets. And then Donovan's obviously playing just a terrific level. So that game really kind of went back and forth, momentum, and Denver ended up kind of outlasting the Jazz. But I feel like the Jazz kind of found some things last game, in the way that they operated pick and roll, and really, most importantly, just shots fell for them, from three. The way the Jazz play, they have to make threes to be really as good as they want to be, and they're going to get them, but it's a matter of whether they knock them down or not. So it felt like the Jazz just played a little bit more the aggressor, a little more on attack from the beginning, and then just kind of rode Donovan's momentum through the whole thing, and Donovan did a great job of finding guys.
Watching that game, did you get the sense that Denver saw the performance that Donovan had in Game 1, but still the team didn't get the win? That, look, this guy gave us his best shot. They still didn't get the win. We can take care of these guys, and just overlooked Utah?
No, it's interesting. You hear that a lot on the outside. I don't know really how much of that goes on. I almost tend to believe that, little tweaks here and there by the players, something they learn from game to game, maybe something the coaches found specifically. And then just Donovan, most importantly, Donovan being a willing passer. It's really a great trait that he has, that he can draw and create, help basically on one or two dribbles. And then he's just great at finding guys. And then what really has to happen for that to be successful, the dude's got to make the shot. So, Jazz did a great job of moving it. The ball did not stick. And then guys on the receiving end knock shots down.
You brought up pick and roll defense a little bit earlier, and some of the little adjustments that the Jazz made. It seemed like Denver really struggled with their pick and roll offense. And I mean, as a complete unprofessional, it seemed to me that the Jazz were doing a much better job of taking away passing lanes. And so it made it a little more difficult for Jokic to get the ball where he wanted, or even Murray, and it forced them into second, third, and fourth options from where they perhaps wanted to start the play.
Yeah, I feel like, that's really, from a coaching perspective, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to say, what is option A and B and even C, and how do we get them to option D? And some teams that's easier to do than others. I mean, you can say that with James Harden, just trap him, take him away, but he is such an elite passer that, it doesn't always work. But feel like that's what a coach tries to do. So yeah, that was actually pretty professional, Eric. You were.
Oh, don't, Coach. Please don't do that to
We
him.
need to record that and put that on the loop.
We're not rolling, actually. So, hey, Coach, you have a different eye than guys like Eric and I see the game. What have you seen out of Juwan Morgan that has given Coach Snyder so much trust in him as in the games 1 and 2?
I don't know a ton about Juwan, but what I can tell you from history, and you want to have confidence that a guy is going to give you everything he has. I think that at the NBA level, guys particularly on the fringe, that's what they live for, is that opportunity. And then almost more important than that is just an understanding of what you're trying to do. You can get guys that are very talented and perhaps more talented than other guys, but particularly in this situation where Juwan's kind of joining a group and hasn't played a ton with them all year long, you just want a guy who's going to go out there and play hard, and just know where he's supposed to be and when he's supposed to be there. And all the other stuff kind of works itself out. We went through, you guys talked about a little bit about Jimmer. Obviously the situation with Jimmer his freshman year, he didn't start one game for us, and I think maybe that could tell you why I'm sitting in the corporate America now, because I can figure out we had Jimmer as a freshman. But, in all honesty, though, we had a really great option in Ben Murdoch, who's, my understanding, is a Logan guy.
Yes.
And Ben was seasoned and had played a long time and was mature. And he, most importantly, knew, we had a talented group out there. We had guys like Playstead and Kamard and Tavanari. And so we really needed a point guard who just understood what we were trying to do and get the ball where it needed to go. And Jimmer came in from the start, and it was a great thing, but Jim was always thinking, how can I get this ball in the basket? So there was a little bit of a situation where we went with maybe, and this is no knock on Ben, because, Jimmer ended up being National Player of the Year, but we went with a guy who was maybe a little less talented for a guy who really did understand what we were trying to do and just kind of fit that role better. So that's probably the same situation Juwan's going through right now. Is he's joining a team, he's got some familiarity with the guys, but he just can play hard, get extra possessions, knock down open shots, and just not get in the way.
Juwan Morgan has certainly been a nice bright spot for the Jazz, and you talked about the change of Donovan Mitchell from Game 1 to Game 2. Another guy that I felt like had more of an impact in Game 2 compared to Game 1 was Royce O'Neal. I thought that his defensive presence on Murray was much more effective, and I thought he was more of a contributor offensively as well for the Jazz, and I think that made a big difference for Utah. What have you seen in Royce O'Neal, and how important is he to the success of this series for the Utah Jazz?
I think Royce is really, really important to the Jazz overall, because he is the guy who gets probably the toughest assignment night in and night out defensively, and he's going to guard guys bigger than him, and he'll guard guards as well. And so the fact that he's versatile and has the ability to kind of keep bigger guys away from the basket and smaller guys at bay, not giving up straight line drives, he's a guy you really lean on. And then, I think his effort and intensity is pretty similar night in and night out. I think that's the kind of his hallmark. But where he becomes so valuable is he's a guy, you're going to have Gobert rolling. You're going to have Joe spotted up. You get Donovan with the ball in his hand. And, the one guy you're going to probably say, we'll take our chances sucking off a little bit is, on defense is off of is Royce's man. So it's just, that's going to be really important, because he's going to get a lot of catch and shoot threes. And that's kind of what his role is on this team. It's 3-and-D. And it's funny because he makes a few shots and it seems maybe he's playing better defense. That's even an error sometimes you make as a coach, but more than anything, he's going to get similar shots and he's going to play hard defensively. It's, hey, can I knock down open ones? And yeah, I think he is an X factor for this series, because I think he is a guy that can guard and cause problems for Murray. But also offensively, he's going to get shots, and he's proven he can, knock them down at 40% or better. The Jazz are going to be in a good place.
What do you see happening in tomorrow's Game 3?
It'll be interesting because there's always tweaks, and that's kind of the beauty of the NBA playoffs. I don't really love the NBA all year long, but man, the playoffs, that's where everything kind of gets fine-tuned, and coaches are doing everything they can. It's like a chess match, really high-level chess match. So I love everything that goes into it. My expectation is that Denver's got to do something to try to commit to get the ball out of Donovan's hands. I almost wonder if maybe they let Rudy get some. Maybe the Jazz might have some roles open up, because everybody's so worried about shooters, and that may be something that where it's a 2-pointer as opposed to a 3, they're going to make Rudy more of a scorer. But I would have to think Denver's going to have to do something to just really slow Donovan's rhythm down and get the ball out of his hands and not let him, whether it's trapping ball screens or running 2 guys at him as he crosses half court, just to get the ball out of his hands and not let him get in a rhythm would be my guess. It's always interesting on the other end because, in my mind, Jokic is one of the great players in the league, but Rudy tends to really kind of neutralize him, and they need him to be great for them to win the series. Speaking of Denver, and that's where the Jazz. That's why I feel like from the beginning I felt like it was a great matchup because Jokic is so key to them, and I feel like Rudy more than anybody perhaps in the league neutralizes him. So I'm confident with the Jazz figuring out a way to win tomorrow, and I actually I picked them to win the series as well. So I think they'll do that.
Utah Jazz Radio Network analyst and former BYU men's basketball assistant coach Jim LaComb joins us here on the Full Court Press. Coach, you understand the importance and the imperativeness of a relationship with players, from a coaching member to a player. Johnny Bryant will take the head associate job in New York under Tom Thibodeau. Is it similar of the relationship or the importance of relationship with a player and coach in college as it is in the NBA? I ask because Donovan Mitchell, a day after scoring 57, the fear is that Donovan might go and head to New York to play with Johnny Bryant because they have the relationship with each other.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and congrats to Johnny. Johnny was actually the guy who played for us at Utah when I was there, and Johnny's one of the great young coaches, but more importantly, one of the great people in the country. It's not out of the ordinary, even, at my old rusty age, to just get a text every now and again from Johnny, who's out there setting the world on fire. So it's always awesome to see people that kind of remember people along the journey, but I'm so happy for Johnny. I would have to think that's part of New York's positioning. Johnny's also notoriously tight and grew up in the same area as Damian Lillard, just a few years ahead of him. So played for the same AAU team as well. So there's got to be something to that. Also, with the fact that Johnny's just great at what he does, he's one of the best, known player development guys in the NBA. So I think guys like him and they like working with him. But the X factor and the thing you always got to remember is, it's a long way for Donovan between now and then. A lot of things can happen in a positive light, and a lot of things can happen in a tough light, and that's why, looking 3 years down the road. And the other thing is, what's the tenure of a New York Knicks assistant coach? How long does that typically last? So there's a lot of things that actually have to happen for those to stack up.
Great point. Will that coaching staff still even be in place?
Yeah, coaching's so fickle, man. You see guys all the time that have a great year, and the next year they struggle, and they're out on their ear, and it's the nature of it. So when you talk 3 years in a coaching situation, man, you might as well, that's a long way away.
Speaking about coaching, just let's talk about Quinn Snyder. As you've observed him, you've worked with him in various different capacities, just the type of mind that he has and the type of preparation that he'll put in to get the Jazz ready for Game 3 and to play well in this series. And what kind of adjustments do you think he might make coming into Game 3?
Well, I think Quinn's the ultimate tactician. I go back to last year when the Jazz played the Rockets in the first round, and the Jazz kind of came up with the jumping up all the way up on Harden's left side and even though he got a full head of steam, like it didn't look great the first game. The second game, the Jazz got better at it. By the end of the series, not only was it ultra effective, but everybody else that played the Rockets employed it, and you still see it now. And I think that's what Quinn is. I think he's a guy who thinks outside the box. I think there's guys who kind of do what they do, and then there's guys that are always constantly tweaking and trying to find advantages. And I think Quinn's that type of guy. I don't know him great personally, but I've got so much respect for what he's done through his career and really kind of what he's done with the Jazz since he's got here. And it's fun because I have two guys, Johnny and Alex Jensen, who were both players on staffs I was on. So it's just cool to see all that stuff kind of come together. But I can't say enough positive about Quinn. I think he's a guy, and I think this is probably the best compliment you could pay him. He's a guy that players trust, and I think he does a great job as a communicator. And he has a vision, and I think guys believe it and buy it. And that's, as you guys know, that's 90% of the game.
Coach, the Mountain West Wire all-decade team for the Mountain West Conference just came out today. Three guys that you are extremely, extremely familiar with are all on the first team, that being your own Jimmer Fredette, a guy you faced and gave you trouble, Kawhi Leonard, and, of course, Sam Merrill from Utah State. Ken, I know it's a loaded question, so forgive me for this, but can you talk about what all three had as an impact, not only on their teams, but on the conference as well?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And what a group of guys, right? I mean, you talk about, start with, because we're talking Logan, start with Sam. I mean, here's a guy that, from a young age, all that kid did was win. Didn't matter what club team he was on. His high school teams won state championships. He went to Logan and absolutely tore it up for 4 years. I am such a Sam Merrill guy. I had an awesome opportunity to recruit him. I don't think we were ever in the game. But you talk about a kid with nothing but respect, lowers his head, gets it done. I think that he's a guy, if you want to sum up his career, I think he similar to Tyler Haws, who I coached, just consistent. Very rarely did you see a night where Sam just didn't have it. And I mean, that's so hard, what these guys go through, the travel, the knocking around in practice, and trying to maintain school and being married and being an amateur and not having a ton of money, go down the list. But his ability to be consistently good was really, really impressive. And he's a guy who, having coached against him, he was the number one guy on the scouting report every night, from about his sophomore year on. And I just feel like his leadership and consistency, I think, is the hallmark he'll leave there. Jim was a guy who, it really kind of became a phenomenon. Jimmer was, in my mind, he kind of transcended the game. What he did in 2010, 11, you started seeing even the NBA played a little bit different. And, you started seeing guys, shoot it from quote unquote Jimmer range in the NBA. And now it's, you got Dame night in and night out pulling up from the logo. I think Jimmer, there's something, I think he was, in my mind, a little bit revolutionary, which I really always kind of liked. He, wouldn't be seen as the toughest guy. People didn't think he was, always competed defensively, which is probably fair. But, I mean, you talk about just absolute, knock your socks off games that, you just can't get enough of. And I'll share, I hope I'm okay to take just a minute, but we went back to playing Glens Falls, Jimmer's senior year, which is his hometown. It's such a cool old New York town upstate. And it was funny because my wife and I went for a walk that day, and there were a couple bars, with Michelob and Coors, and they had BYU flags hanging there too, which was just so awesome. But I'm telling you, man, I walked into that arena, and you talk about the special guys like Sam who I believe is as special as they come. Jimmer's a special guy. And walking into that arena that night, when we started to get the the PA announcer took the mic, I mean, there wasn't a person that wasn't just buzzing in that town to see him play. And I think that's kind of the effect that guys like he and Sam, Kawhi, have on their communities, right? And then the last guy, Kawhi, was just, I tell this all the time, but when he was a freshman, our game plan on him, actually his whole college career, was gap him 4 feet and make him shoot a jumper, and then make sure you block him out, because that was the best thing he did. He was an elite rebounder, particularly his own miss. So I think what Kawhi did is he took San Diego State to heights they'd never been before. I mean, I think Jimmer did the same thing at BYU, and Sam, Utah State's had a ton of success, but I just think Sam's consistency and legacy will always be just a local guy who stayed true to, his parents went there. He, in my mind, an Aggie offer was as good as a Duke offer. And that's all he ever really wanted, and just knew who he was and did what he did. And I fully expect that kid to play in the NBA. I think somebody's going to, there's a bunch of guys that do a lot of homework, but they're going to see the greatness we've all seen.
Actually, I was going to ask a follow-up on that. Do you think that Sam has a future in the NBA? Some draft boards put him in the second round. Some guys are overlooking Sam.
No, I think he totally does. The guy that reminds me a little bit of Sam, you see him playing a pretty vital role for a really good team right now, is the Raptors. And Matt Thomas is a guy that comes off the bench for them, about 6'5", kind of a do-everything guy, really can score it, tough, can guard. Those are types of guys that stick in that league. I don't know how the draft will work out. I mean, it's so crazy anyway this year with COVID, and how the combine's going to be done virtually and all that stuff. But I do know, regardless of whether he gets drafted or not, if somebody gives him a chance, he's going to stick.
Coach, I hope you know that you are a gem of a human being. Honestly, you do a hell of a job on the Utah Jazz Radio Network. It's an honor and privilege to be able to listen to you. We look forward to hearing your thoughts tomorrow.
You guys, no problem. Thanks so much. And anytime, AJ, Eric, I can join you guys, let me know. I'd love to do it.